All right, let's get to it.
All right, so we're going to try something new tonight. So one of the things that has been on my mind a lot lately is, it's Mental Health Awareness Month, right? And we talk about mental health, and we talk about anxiety and depression, and we talk about a lot of, I would call them the symptom, from my perspective, my uneducated, unprofessional perspective on this whole thing. We talk a lot about the symptom side of mental health as it relates to entrepreneurship, like the things people go through and how hard it is and how lonely it is and stuff like that. But what we don't talk about, or maybe don't talk about enough from my perspective, and this is where I've been thinking, and I wanted to get your guys' insight on this and just have a conversation, is we've, from City Entrepreneur, from your launch and some of the other things that we've talked about lately, we talk about the need for cultural shift in Kansas City, for there to be greater support for entrepreneurship and one of those types of things. And whether it's investors or whether it's people wanting to start their own ventures, we don't talk about failure. Like, I hear this mantra around the entrepreneurial community that really makes the hair on my neck stand up, is this idea of failing fast. And I hate that, because to me, it's not failure, it's like an opportunity to learn and get better. But that's the way I think about it. And I know there's a lot of people who, when it comes to things like failure, it is a barrier, that fear of failure. And I've been thinking a lot about this a lot, and trying to process through. And I thought the best way to process some of this kind of stuff is to have a conversation. And I thought, all right, who do I want to have a conversation with about this? And you guys were the ones that were on my list based on some of the work we've been doing together, and some of the experiences and the knowledge that I know you have. And it just seemed like a good idea. So we'll see how it goes. So I'm not the moderator. I just wanted to kick the conversation off. And I think one of the things I wanted to get from you guys is, what do you think about failure as it relates to, how do you process it, or how do you think about failure? What is it? I know you probably got some very interesting views on what it does to the mind and the neuroscience behind it. So I don't know. I'll just throw it out there.
I'll start it. This is definitely a rigid start to the conversation. Everybody hear me okay out there? All good? So I think that, from an early age, not that we're taught, but we understand how much help can get you. And so I think that understanding that failure is a real thing and not always a lesson. Failure is a real thing, and failure can become a lesson, but sometimes you simply just fail. And it's not that because it's failure, it's because you didn't use what you had. You didn't ask help. You didn't ask your wise counsel. And, my example on that is a conversation with we had recently, you and I, Kevin. And, as Waylo grows and as we continue to scale and pursue our avenues, you told us, you said, don't test on your ideal client. That's wise counsel. So if I never got that information, I would have gone to my ideal client and I could have failed with them. I could have failed the first impression, and I could have reconciled it, but it doesn't mean I didn't fail it the first time. So understanding, the actual procedures of how things should work and having your wise counsel, it's not that you failed the job, but you failed yourself by not accessing everything you had. So I think that failure is a great teacher, as well as embarrassment is a great teacher if you learn from it. But if you don't learn from it, then just to set a baseline for this conversation, if you don't take time to learn from it, assess it, and then implement a better strategy, then baseline can be classified as failure. So I think that a lot of times people my age especially, they're like, oh, it's not a loss, it's a lesson. I'm like, it is a loss if you do the same thing next time, if you didn't ask for wise counsel, if you didn't seek help. So I think that if you had all your variables before going into it, then it's a lesson. But if you thought you knew what to do and you didn't ask for help and you didn't seek wise counsel, then you failed at that point. Not that you failed in general, but you failed at not using the resources that you have.
Isn't failure a societal stigma in a way? As kids, we don't
100%. In school, they count down from 100 instead of going up to getting points. You lose points.
Yeah, and I don't get this idea that like as kids, you don't think of it like when you try something and it doesn't work, it's not failure. You're like, oh, you keep trying, you keep doing stuff, you keep,
Right.
but at some point you're like, oh, you failed. Like, okay, you stop. Or I don't know. It just feels like this is a societal norm that we've created, not a real.
I mean, yeah, and that neurologically is how it 100% works. The only way you can learn is through failing. Like error is a trigger for neuroplasticity in your brain. It's how you learn. When you fail at something or you get something wrong, epinephrine is released to help you bring urgency to that so your brain can figure it out so you don't get it wrong next time. Acetylcholine highlights the neurons that you're trying to use and not working the correct way. And then when you eventually get it right, you get dopamine that sews them together while you sleep. So it's like the only way you can learn is through error and through failure, if you will. So no matter how old you are, that is literally how it always works. It's feedback, not failure.
Man, I see failure. I say failure is a good opportunity for a great story, right? And I don't want to be cliche. I'm going to be like real, like failure is a real thing. Like it's a real fear, right? I'll give this example. Growing up in Nigeria, I say, funny enough, I tell people say I was they say they're homeschooled. I was next door schooled because there was a school right next to my house that my dad built just because they didn't want me to leave the house, and it was named after my middle name, which I will not say on stage. But literally as a kid, I was celebrated for getting grades just because I had like 2 people in my class. It was me and my next door neighbor. So
Top of your class meant a whole different thing.
The whole time.
Victorian.
Top of my class the whole time. The best student in the 1-2 people school. But then when I left that school and went to high school, it was a big competition because it was not my dad's school or my mom's school. I had to compete with other people. I didn't do as well just because I wasn't prepared for real life, right? I felt undermined. I felt like I wasn't valuable enough just because my grades were not enough. I wasn't recognized anymore enough. I thought I was just like, whatever I was doing wasn't working out. But at that moment, it made me a shy human being. It made me to be someone who doesn't show up for themselves. But I say all that to say, failure where I come from is seen as this huge stigma. And that's why most people go to a career that's safe, just because they don't want to be able to feel what they felt as a kid whenever they failed their class, right? And then coming to the U.S. for me was it was a reset for me. I was like, I don't care. Like, if I fail here, no one knows who I was or this is a new me, right? And for me, I've failed so many times. Coming to the U.S., starting with engineering and going to business was a failure. In Nigeria, you're either a lawyer, engineer, or a doctor. Everything you're doing is a failure. So me choosing the path that I'm doing every single day is literally me failing every single day. So to me, I enjoy the journey because I have so many stories of me failing that, hindsight 2020, it wasn't a good time, but now I laugh about it because I've learned from it. I graduated in 2021. I wasn't given a visa to work. I had no job. I had nothing, I started my business. I was afraid I might be deported, but at the same time, I took that risk. Hindsight 2020 was the best decision of my life, but dang. And then don't knock on my door. I'm like, don't open that door. We don't know who's coming in. You can say, hey, be safe. But hindsight 2020, you fail, you learn and grow. So,
yeah, it's what got me really thinking about this was a conversation I had recently with somebody about my career and about what I do now versus like my career. And I thought, when I reflect back on like kind of my journey to get here, I think of as many of the like complete effed up things that like didn't go well, that define my path. But like a lot of the people, like, you don't put that stuff on your LinkedIn. You don't put that shit out for like, hey, guess I screwed this up. And yeah, this went horribly wrong. And we wasted a lot of money on this one. And yeah,
We should.
well, I don't know. Personal life, like all the like personal things that I've gone through that I could just point at and say, yeah, I failed there. We don't put those things out for people to see and to talk about. But without those things, I wouldn't be doing this, right? I wouldn't be doing what I'm doing now. So I assume all of you guys have had like some individual, like, I mean, you've not done everything perfect, right?
Oh, absolutely not. The first AI company I ran exploded in my face. It was terrible. Hired tons of people, had to fire them all, or not fire them, let them go. Like wasted $150,000. Yeah, like absolutely, tons of things have not gone right.
Well, even for me, before I started with Weiwo, I sold a marketing agency, and so being one of the few kids in a college that had a business, nevertheless sold it for a profit. It was like, wow, you're killing it, and no one knew that. I had no idea what to do next. I had to hire people. I didn't know who to hire, and the easiest option was to take the lowest offer for this marketing agency. And so for everybody else, I was like, wow, you're killing it. Whatever you do next, I support it. And for me, I'm like, I can't run a business. I don't want to do this again. Thank God I have, partners to take the journey, but I think it makes like failure like time sensitive. We watched a session together, and it talked about how people have Vincent van Gogh's paintings in their basement collecting dust. Why is there Vincent van Gogh paintings collecting dust in basements? Because the painting sucked.
Because he sucked.
Because the painting sucked. And like, it's the raw truth of like what we're talking about. But I think that similarity that we have is that we're trying to solve a problem. And so if you're trying to solve a problem, there's either quitting or success. And so by solving a problem, the only way to solve it is by throwing as many possibilities to solve that problem. So I think for us, like, we understand that like failure is only part of the process. Because if we got it right the first time, we'd all pick a new passion, a new route.
So why do we think failure is negative? I mean, it goes back to like, and I think Zik, your stories are a great example because it differs by culture. So it has to be an external perception of what we're worried about. So like this whole, I grew up with this, this saying, fear, uncertainty, and doubt, FUD. Like FUD manages, like most people make decisions based on fear, uncertainty, and doubt. More so than a desired outcome and an ambition or like the positive things. More people make decisions based on what they're afraid might happen or things they don't know. Like I don't know what's going to happen, so better to stay here, or doubt, like this idea that it's going to go terribly wrong. Like, why would I do this? It's gonna.
Your brain doesn't like uncertainty. It doesn't like surprises. It wants to know what's going to happen next. And so the potential, the fear of failure could lead to, like you're saying, an uncertain outcome, an uncertain future. Like you start a company or you do something, you stand up to speak in front of someone, you have no idea what's going to happen. So it freaks out your brain. And if you don't practice and train the muscles of doing those things, you don't get better at experiencing failure as a different emotion, I feel like.
You don't get better at experiencing failure. Wow.
I think failure is a wake-up call of something's wrong, right? If you do something that is like, something's not working out, we have to think about it. I'll give this example. My last event, I had a lot of people say, man, this was the dope event. People showed out, it was packed out. But my first ever event at UMKC, it was me on my TV screen that showed up for that event. But really quickly, I learned that there was something I was missing, which is I had no value to give people. And I was inviting them to go and do what, right? Quickly, you learn from failures that there's something that's missing that you have to fix. What am I missing here? If you never ask that question, you're not learning. You're just going through life the same way and over again. And I also think failure is for you to be able to see failure in a different perspective, it's a self-confidence thing. Because you've arrived at a place where you understand what failure is, as opposed to just taking it as what life is giving you.
That leads me to shout out to my mom, but she says to me all the time, whenever I call home complaining, she says comparison is the killer of joy. And it's that same aspect, I can wake up tomorrow, we had a great professional development day, and I can go home and feel great about it, and then someone can ask me how much money do you make doing that? And I can feel like a failure instantly. But I think that kind of a question for you guys is like, for me, failure comes the same way over and over again. It's usually the thought of I should have prepared better, almost every time. I should have prepared better is usually like my main feeling of failure. It's like I let myself down by not preparing better. And I'm just curious, like, do you guys have like that same access point of failure, or is it something that comes and goes with every scenario?
Nope, there's not a pattern necessarily. Usually I learn from all of those experiences. I struggle with even saying the word that failure. Like now I've like conditioned myself that like all these experiences I've had where it didn't work out and I've learned something new to go to the next time. There's a variety of things. A lot of it is prep. A lot of it is like preparation, and by that it's like I could have prepared better, but also I could have been, more present in a situation. The signs were there, and I didn't pay attention to them, because I was so fixated on, something else or something, like the goal, and I didn't see all these things that were in the way. And I think as an entrepreneur, as someone who's like built things, sometimes you have to ignore those things. Like if you ignore them, they will go away. Right? That's my mindset sometimes. But then if they don't work out, I'm like, yeah, I knew that wasn't going to work out. Like I saw that thing. Like I knew it was there.
Yeah.
Mine sometimes is not asking for help, like when I know I should. Like I get in trouble for that sometimes. Like finances. My boy Craig's out here somewhere. He helped me with my finances today. Like you're supposed to know your numbers as an entrepreneur and all this stuff. I'm a freaking brain scientist. I don't know numbers like Craig does. Like he has this whole beautiful spreadsheet of all these things, and like I just don't ask for help sometimes. I did this time, but I don't always, and that's something I notice sometimes. I'm scared to ask for help.
I mean, speaking of that, we all entrepreneurs, we need the number guy because we never pay attention to that. So
true.
We need that. Man, I think my brain works in so many different weird ways in a funny way. I think most times feeling like you said is about, not being prepared. And sometimes you get abducted. I was kidnapped at a point, but I wasn't prepared, but I wasn't prepared. Tune into my podcast. I'm starting a podcast very soon. Some interesting stories are going to come through. But like you said, it's sometimes not being prepared, and sometimes just life hands you things that you never expect. Like it's just like what else would go wrong? I have so many stories of like things not going my way, where I got into a point where I think it was 2018 where I was like, I read this book called Shatter the Chatterbox, and it was basically being able to go face front with your anxiety and saying, hey, what else could go wrong? Hit me. Like you already did, like hit me. What else could go wrong? Let me take that risk. Yeah. If I fail, I fail, but what else? So I just have a different perspective.
The other thing I feel like is not talked about a lot in relation to failure is the fear of success. Like sometimes I feel like I am more scared of running something going wildly successful and then me being like, wait, I'm 20 something running this company. I got 50 employees. What the hell am I going to do? And I get more scared about the success almost.
I think that's like that fun thing, like that uncertainty and doubt, like that, what if this works and I don't know what I'm doing and then I'm exposed as a fraud? And it's like, what are you talking about? Like this is the voice in my head. This is the conversation I'm having, right?
Well, the voice in my head, to get as transparent as possible, to maybe it benefits someone listening. But the biggest voice in my head sometimes is like, you're 25 years old and you can only be the young entrepreneur for so long. That's it. And like, it's terrifying to me. It's terrifying to realize that one day your success will not be measured by who you helped, by the amount of effort you put in. Someone's going to ask me, what's green versus red? How much did you make? How much did you lose? Who'd you help? Who's affected by it? And so I feel that bone deep in terms of like, when success comes, I want to make sure that I can foster success for everybody involved and not just success be a dollar sign or for me or for Weiwo. And so like one of my biggest fears in terms of failure is taking this time of being the young entrepreneur and having, the time to have effort, efficiency, impact, be metrics of success, knowing that like those dwindle over and over time, and they ask you like, what is the income and what is these things? So for me, like, I think I was saying this earlier, but I think it always comes down to like, what are you grateful for? Like, what are you grateful for? And with gratitude, optimism is sustainable. If you can continuously identify what you're grateful for, then optimism is truly sustainable. I'm so grateful. I'm so grateful that me and Raven went from a dorm room to this building helping people. And when I go home, that gratefulness makes me optimistic to wake up and do it again. Even though I got the messages about income, I got the messages about rent, I got the messages about insurance. My dad took me off the phone bill 7 months ago. All the small things that happen. But I think that you have to like, if your goal is optimism, then you should start with what are you grateful for.
Sorry.
Well, and is the last point on that is like with that gratefulness, I think that failure sometimes can be a feeling. And, you know, I don't know what feeling you guys have, but I can firmly remember the feeling of when my dad had to do time in prison. And knowing that I was 19 years old, I knew the family business, I knew how to do it, I knew how to do that, and I was just having a good time. And I never want to feel that feeling again, knowing that my mom had to take another job, that my brother had to quit going to college to come back to another job. So I think there's a feeling with failure that you have to remember, because if you don't remember it, then you'll never be grateful and optimistic.
I wonder we're going to get to that, because I think this is an important point. So the next two things I want to talk about, Zik, I want to let you, whatever you're going to say, but we're going to talk about perseverance and grit.
Mm-hmm.
And those as being like some of the top researched or top identified characteristics of successful entrepreneurs and successful people. I think there's been a lot of research done around grit, especially recently, it's like since the 70s. But so I want to talk about those things, because that's what you're describing is to me a little bit more like grit. Like that feeling you have is like, I'm never going to let that happen again, is like, that's when it stirs this like emotional thing. Like if perseverance is the mental side of like, I'm going to continue to learn, I'm going to continue to adapt, I'm going to continue to do this task and get this task done. Like you persevere through hurdles and so on. Grit is this like emotional counterpart that's like, yeah, and I'm going to get you up every morning at 5 a.m. to make sure you do it. You know,
Well,
like
everyone makes the same face when you bring up the word grit. So I think that's like it's like indicator of how you feel inside. Yeah.
yeah.
I think what I was gonna say is actually aligned with what you're asking. I think when it comes to perseverance and grit, I would say three things. One, when you're dropped in a situation where you either have to succeed or die trying. Two, where you have people who didn't believe in you, have to prove them wrong. And three, when you have a village behind you, you're not just doing whatever you're doing for yourself, but you're representing a whole community that you have to go back and represent. The first one is I came to US in 2016 and my brother dropped me off on truce. And he said, adios, figure it out.
That doesn't sound Nigerian.
What? I'm 20 years old. Like, what? But he was helping me like pay my rent every month, but I knew how to pay part of it. And then 2 months into it, he's like, I can't pay for you anymore. I'm like, what? I have no job. Where am I going to get money? But I figured like 3 months into it, I found a job. But all that to say that when you have no other choice to succeed, you have no other choice but to succeed, because there's no plan B. You can't mess around. Like you have to succeed, because you either stay in that situation, grow, or die. That's just it. And then number two is I have a family member who didn't believe in what I'm doing, and every day I wake up, I have to prove them wrong, because I have to show that this is possible and we can make it happen. Like I said, you're either an engineer, doctor, lawyer, or you're a failure. So I'm failing and enjoying failing and growing as I go. And the third thing is I come from a very poor town, and there people are really like struggling. So I have to go back at some point and help them out. And whatever I'm building, I have to learn how to build this and be able to teach someone else to build on their own and be able to create their own finances. So I think those are my three things: live, grow, or die. Prove someone wrong that you actually know what you're doing. And third, have something that is a why for you, a purpose.
Yeah, I mean, I think that's beautiful. And like, I guess scientifically, the way I look at them, like perseverance is like continuing to go forward even with setbacks. Grit is perseverance times passion over time. And so those are how I like to look at. I look at those like scientifically, and I think something that keeps people moving forward is purpose. Like if you read back and look at what you're talking about, every successful entrepreneur has something like that. Like Henry Ford wanted the middle class, the working class, to be able to afford automobiles. So he kept working at it and working at it and working at it. When everyone else wanted him to charge thousands of dollars for the Model T, he's like, no, we're not going to do that. And that passion and that purpose kept him moving forward. The same thing with Steve Jobs. He wanted to put computers with everybody, for everyone to have, and make them beautiful and leave an impact in the world. That was his purpose. It kept him going. So I feel like that's absolutely something that keeps you moving forward.
That same video that you were talking about that we watched, the Franz Johansson,
Medici.
the keynote that he gave talking about, data not being a factor in like innovation, because if we all went with what data was, we would have missed all these opportunities for people to do things where the data suggested something different. And I think about like the other examples they gave besides, the paintings in the basement were the number of like famous people who we know for like, inventing things that changed the world, i.e. electricity and some of those things. And like this series of the number of failures they went to get to a success was, and I always wonder, do they think about them as failures, or were they more thinking about them from this perseverance and grit? Like, I'm going to do this, and maybe I'm going to prove the guy next to me wrong who said, you can't do that. You're going to blow the lab up. And he's like, oh yeah, watch me. Like, and I was kind of wonder those things, like how they process that and how people, can you teach perseverance?
100%. 100%. James Dyson, it was 5,721 before he got the right, like, Dyson vacuum cleaner we know today. Like, you can absolutely teach perseverance. You can teach grit. Like, it's been demonstrated tons of times. Like, I like to make things extraordinarily actionable. Like, find something. If you're not working out, can you do one push-up a day? Okay, if you can do one push-up, get a little jar, fill one with marbles, leave one empty. Grab a marble every single day and put a marble, every day you do one push-up, put a marble into the jar and watch it grow. And you'll start to learn like perseverance through those things. If it's just one push-up, you can build the muscle with something super, 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 super laughably easy, and then do 2 push-ups, and then 10 push-ups, and then 20 push-ups. I've helped somebody lose like 300 pounds doing that.
I'm going to go buy some marbles.
You can do that. You can trick your brain. Like, you can absolutely do that.
That's what you've been thinking about, right, Kevin?
Yeah, I'm like, where can I get some marbles on my way home? So one of our regulars here at Sessions, one of my favorite Keystone community people, Matt Heelan, just wrote a blog post about the scientific method. I don't know if you guys had a chance to see that, but if you haven't, I would check out, it's mattheelan.com, his blog posts. But he had one where one of these live ones, he was talking about how the root of entrepreneurship, like the scientific method, like that's how you teach this. Like that's how you teach perseverance in my mind.
100%.
Like, because again, perseverance is that learning aspect of it. But like, so then let me ask the same question. Can you teach grit?
Yes. But you can teach grit, again, is perseverance times plus passion over time. So what is passion? Passion, if you look at curiosities, passions, and problems. So Zik mentioned it, right? Passions, or curiosities, that releases dopamine, epinephrine in your brain. Like, what are you curious about? What would you spend a weekend looking at? Times that by something you're passionate about. So if you list out 25 curiosities, do 3 of them go to technology and 10 of them are neuroscience? Great. Then you're passionate about neuroscience and technology. Maybe you're passionate about neurotechnology. Then what's your problem? Like, what problems do you want to solve? And not just for you, but for the whole world. Something bigger than just you. Like Henry Ford wanted to help the working class, help everybody. So if you multiply curiosities, passions, and problems, you get purpose. And so that's the purpose piece of grit. Perseverance we just talked about with the marbles. Multiply those together times time, and you've got both.
So here's and I agree with you, Cody, that everything, I think, even when it comes to fitness, right? People make it this huge deal where you can just start push up a day. And once you get into that mentality of this is who I am a fit person, it's easier to go to the gym. But until you get to that mindset, it's hard to get up every day and do that. But here's a good opportunity for a great story. I think when I was probably 4 or 5 years old, yeah. Me and my mom went to a market, and the market is not like the market here, like it's like crowded, thousands of people. And she was holding me by her hand, right? And I was like, eating some ice cream, and I lost, like, I forgot where I was. I left her hand. I didn't even know when I left her hand. She walked away, and I looked around in the middle of 1,000 people. I couldn't see my mom. I got scared, and I was like, all of a sudden, I remembered every single place we went. Why? Because I had one goal: to find my mom.
Right.
So when you're put in unfavorable situations, you always find a solution to the problem, right? And I found my mom. How I found her, I don't know, but I knew that in my head, I had to
screaming like a banshee. She heard you from a half a mile away.
I had to find her, right? And I mean, I think that's like a daily life. If you have a goal of what you're working on, you will get to that regardless. And that's the same thing you're saying, like with Henry Ford. He had a goal. Regardless of how many times he failed, there's this goal. I'm going to find a solution. But if you don't have something you are working towards, it's easy to stop. Because
why is that? Why is it easy to stop? Like, what is it? So if Is it because they lack the passion for the topic? I know a lot of people who are passionate about things, but they would never have the intestinal fortitude to go start solve a problem, like sort of business, or like go do something meaningful about it, versus it's just so that is that not enough passion? Like why do people quit? If this,
I think we talked about fear when we talked about they extrapolate into the future and they see all the negative things but not the positive things, and they get stunted in fear or paused in fear. It would be a big one from my perspective. They don't have a system to attack, like that doesn't include them not failing. So I think that's a big reason.
I think I don't want to be cliche, but Simon Sinek always says start with why, right? If you don't have a strong enough why, you wouldn't see the reason to keep going. And I think you have to dig deep to know that to find what that why is. Simon Sinek, on the interview, he was talking about how most athletes get depressed at the end of their career just because they were chasing this one thing, which is this gold medal. And once they got it, it was like, it's over. Well, what's next? But the question he asked is, what are you doing to help the next person? And that's the biggest goal anyone can have. So it's like, if you don't have that why to help someone else's life, because Kevin, what you're doing at Keystone is you're helping entrepreneurs. All of us on the stage, like literally everyone in the room. And that's a huge why. And you wake up every single day because even when you want to quit, you see one person walk into that door, that gives you joy. Because you're not just working for money, you're working to help other people. So like that deeper why is why, you keep pushing every single day. It's hard, but
you got momentary happiness, you got flow states, which can keep you happy, and you've got purpose where you're helping people, lots of people. So if that person that you were talking about doesn't have the fortitude, I wouldn't say they're passionate. They haven't connected their passion to something outside of themselves or outside of like me and you. It's not just me, it's not just you, it's all of us.
I agree, and I think one thing that Raven and I talk about a lot is like the connotation of words. And I think that negative connotations of words are not the word itself, it's when they're applied. So for example, stubbornness. Stubbornness is a key factor in perseverance. How many times have people told us Weibo makes no sense, change the name? No, we're not going to change the name. We are open to advice, but we're stubborn to certain things that we are going to hold true to the end of time. And another one, selfish. Selfish is such a negative connotation. We talk about it all the time. Me and Raven talk about it all the time. But if I'm selfish to provide for my family, to provide for my tribe, to provide for my community, is that really selfish? So I think like a lot of times the connotation, where we apply the connotation is detrimental to perseverance, because it's like, oh, you're so persistent and now you're selfish and now you switch up. Now you change how you operate.
Yeah, labels suck.
Yeah, and I think
They just do.
Made Mob, a group here, they have something great. He said, when I looked at my business as a person and I said, what will I do best for that person? He fired 2 of his siblings. And within 24 hours, a cousin and a sibling, within 24 hours. But it's that realization of like stubbornness, selfishness, any other connotation we can think of that are usually negative words are words for a reason. They're action traits for a reason. And if we don't apply those things correctly, without stubbornness, how are you going to hold true against the storm? Without foundation, how are you going to hold true? So I think that for everybody to assess how do these connotations apply to you and how do they hold you back is a giant thing. Another one, disruptive. I think we feel that one, right, Kevin?
I love that one. Yeah, I think that's a good one. It's never been a bad one.
But disruptive can
And when
be,
people call you a disruptor, yeah, I mean, you're right, and that's why I say the labels they're terrible. I've had people like when I started Keystone, people who were like, yeah, this isn't going to work, because you've never done this before, and I don't know, I have to scroll through my career and go, well, I've done some things, so like, are you saying I can't execute? Like, what are you like? There's like this connotation that they put on me, this label that they put on me, and I hate. Like now I'm back to all right, watch me, hold my beer, like, hold my beer.
And someone could say that's wow, you're so prideful, you're so negatively prideful, and it's like, yeah, I am.
But what is
prideful.
that fine line? What is that fine line though between I have a vision, Like, you guys have this thing for Weiwo. You have this vision for Weiwo, and Weiwo is an important part of it because it means something to you, and you're going to persevere, and you're stubborn, or you're all these things, whatever.
So
where's that line, though, between like, okay, at some point...
I really want to hear Cody's answer on this for sure, because I'm gonna learn from it. But for us, I think it's what you give off versus what you're mad that's not consumed. So like if you're a chef, and I guess not to take Gwen's example, right? But if you're a chef and you make all this food, you're gonna be like offended that no one ate, the tater tots, or no one ate the lasagna. You're gonna be offended by these things. But you have to understand that you provided those things in case they needed it. So for us, like, that's the line. Like, we are going to present so many consumable things, and if they're not consumed, that's not our fault. And we are grateful and happy that we provided enough consumable things, because next week someone might need to consume that thing that's easily able to consume. And if we said no one ate lasagna last week, let's not bring back headshots ever again. Then what about the entrepreneur who is a headshot away from that deal? So I think for us, it's like understanding that like we're cooking so it's accessible, not just to be eaten. If that makes sense. I hope that makes sense.
What was the question?
Where's the line between perseverance and grit, like sticking to a vision, maybe seeing something that others don't see and staying with that, versus denialism, which is this idea that, the obvious is staring you, like, this will never work. Like, it's not really about perseverance and grit or anything. Like, this just won't work. Like, you can't drive a car to the moon, man. I'm sorry. It's just not going to happen.
Yeah, I mean, I think that's the definition. Right? Denialism is delusional. Like, if you can't make red green, like if
Where's
you're
the
breaking
line?
the law, if you're breaking the law of physics, that's why I literally
You can't
draw
fly
it
if you jump
at the
off.
line of physics. Vision is actionable. You can do it. It's multiplied by time. Like, you take your purpose, multiply it by time, and that's your vision. Like,
Got a new hat trick in the mentor list now. Well, if you can do it from a physics perspective, you should keep doing it.
I mean, truly, like you're saying, like, people will look at you like, you can't do this, and you're like, well, I mean, if I do this, this, and this, multiplied by multiple years, it will happen. Like,
Yeah.
it takes time. It's your purpose, time, your time. Like, that's it.
I don't know if I have anything to say about that, but I do want to piggyback off of what Jonathyn said about someone firing their family member. I've been fired more times by my brother than any company I have ever worked in my life. So I feel that it hit home.
Same brother? Same brother?
My same brother, yeah.
So my question is, why does he keep hiring?
Yeah, that was
you,
my
man?
question,
Like,
yeah.
like,
What
come
the
on.
hell? It's his family. Of course. My mom
Failure.
calls him like, hey, hire him back. Okay.
He's persevering through your failures. I mean, is what's happening here at this
Exactly.
point, right?
So at a point he was like, yeah, we can't do this. But you can't find it anywhere online. But what I was gonna say is I do have a twisted way of seeing things. I always find funny in funny situations. Like even when you were asking me how I run upstairs, right? For me, it's weird, but that's fun for me. Like I'm having fun running up the stairs. When I'm working, I'm having fun just because I enjoy doing it. And I read this book, and it's weird, but like when I go through tough situations, I laugh at myself because your brain cannot understand when you're laughing and when you're angry. Like I don't know, maybe I didn't get it right, but like if you're laughing, even when things are going bad, it thinks everything is going good, so you're doing good.
Oh, yeah. Like,
You know what I mean?
The plane's going down, everything's on fire, people are screaming, and you're laughing, and your body's like, it's cool. Like,
We're good
yeah,
with no
we're good.
anxiety.
Yeah, we're good.
You know what I mean? It's like because that's how I cheat my brain sometimes.
Yeah, it's
He's like, help me, Cody.
He's about to tell you that
brain.
he's about to tell you
While you were
something's
talking,
wrong.
I looked at him and I said,
He's a
is
psychopath.
that true? Is that true?
Help us.
I mean, it's true. Like Navy SEALs do, like a reward buffer. I mean, you can use that. Like dopamine is a buffer for. What
I'm
you're
not a
saying.
psychopath.
It is true. You're not crazy.
Different panel.
But
Conversation.
no buts?
No buts.
No, but
No, but it's an
maybe
actual
not
thing.
with anger, but
No, but
overall.
I'm talking about like in terms of like when I'm struggling with like anxiety, if things are not going my way.
Yes.
You
Yeah.
just laugh.
Just laugh at myself.
Yes, yeah.
And then my brain is like, what's going on right now? Are we angry? Are we stressed? And we keep going.
Yeah,
That's true. Yeah.
I think there's a huge, and I think there's a big line between like, what's it called when we do the same thing over and over again, expecting the same results?
Insanity.
Insanity and like stubbornness. Because One thing that I believe, and it probably is insane, but I believe that next Wednesday, next Tuesday, next event, it can go exactly how I plan it. Like, there is a possibility that it can go exactly how we planned it, down to the T, to the minute, to the second, to the impact, to the customer retention. And like at 2:44 before every single session, I tell myself verbally like this, I say, this can go exactly how you planned it. And that optimism, it refreshes all my optimism, all of like my hope, all my expectations, and all my energy levels for me. And so like it's definitely on that line. But I think about the story all the time that I hear, and it's about like a sailboat. And it's like a sailboat they pick a singular point and they go towards that point. And they're gonna go left and right and get there. But you know what's crazy? Most sailboat people who travel the world, if you meet them in Spain, they're gonna tell you, do you know how many miles I traveled? I traveled 10,000 miles. They're not talking about I came from USA or I got to Europe. All they're saying is I traveled 10,000 miles on my boat, and a straight line is not 10,000 miles. So all that teeter and tottering and left and right and waves creates that story that they share, that creates impact, that creates inspiration. And so the fact that the sailboat operator is talking about the amount of miles, which should be like a discredit to how good of a sailboat artist he is his story. So for me, it's like, I don't know what I'm gonna brag about, for lack of better words, when I'm 70, 80, 90. I don't know what I'm gonna talk about as my success story when I'm 70, 80, 90. And so that's why I like this process. I'm on the sailboat going left and right. I know where I wanna go, but the story is gonna be so different, and the journey is definitely the reward.
I know we're coming to the close of time, but I want to piggyback on what you said about the sailboat.
You're on stage now. You're not,
I'm always worried about the time. I'm the timekeeper. But what I want to say is the sailboat analogy. If you haven't read the book, The Alchemist, read that book.
No, so that's where it's from.
That's a good one.
Because that book was revolutionary for me, learning just like life is a journey. Enjoy it. Don't take the straight path. It will be boring. Don't bore yourself out. Fail, enjoy. Again, failure is a good opportunity for a great story, so.
You said scientific method earlier, and I teach a lot of the people I work with like a super, super basic version for like everyday people called act, assess, adjust in a circle. And I love that. I learned it from Eric Huey, I think. And I use it all the time. And it reminds me of that because like as you're that sailboat dude, he's like acting and turning the rudder this way. And then he has to assess and adjust and move back and he's zigzagging and stuff. I just feel like if you have the perspective that it's feedback, not failure, and that action is not just one thing, it's a cycle of things, and you act, assess, adjust over and over and over again, like that you're not delusional. Like you're going to get there eventually if you continue to do that over and over.
We talk about the scientific method. We talk about things like design thinking or human-centered design, which is a series of experiments and learnings and failures and iterations, right? There's a number of acronyms about being able to like learn and adjust and continue to progress and move things forward. But yet we have this culture that is risk averse, and failure is like grips people and prevents them from doing these things. And I want to have more conversations about how we overcome those things, because one of the things, Zeke, I know you and I have had this conversation. I think this is one of the things that you're focused on is entrepreneurs deserve the truth. They deserve to be told if it's a good idea or a bad idea. They deserve to be told why they're not getting funding, because it's the lifeblood of entrepreneurship is feedback. We talk about pivoting, we talk about people adjusting and finding product market fit or customer validation. It's because they've talked to enough customers, they've heard enough no's, they've heard enough like of the feedback, and they learn until they find that thing that has traction and goes. So for me, I struggle with this, like how do you be more direct and more truthful and deliver that feedback without creating a greater fear of failure, or like that to me this is like that that
How
balance.
do you have the conversation with someone? Like, how do you say that's give the feedback, or what do you mean?
No, if we're seeing failure, and I think we've agreed, like failure is a construct, a social construct, because innately you don't think of it that way. You think of it as a learning process. How do we, if we want to have this culture in the entrepreneurial ecosystem or Kansas City region where failure is tolerated and encouraged or celebrated, or we talk about it more, or we continue to move forward, and investors or people are willing to take chances and do more things, and then at the same time we're like, yeah, we need to be honest with the people and give people more feedback. Like, I don't know, is there a paradox there, or is it one and the same? Am I saying?
Makes sense to me. I usually need to teach people how to give honest feedback, and like half of giving like, I'm not going to fund you, saying that type of thing is hard sometimes, and giving honest criticism is hard sometimes because we don't know how to not hurt someone else's feelings, or that's a fear. So like, if you just said, hey, my biggest fear is going to hurt your feelings, you're going to think I don't like you, but this wasn't good enough, this wasn't good enough, this wasn't good enough. Steve Jobs said that to people. This is not good enough. I know you can do better. Go do better. And he got the best out of everybody. Like it's practicing giving that type of feedback, I feel like, as much as it is learning how to fail. So
Well, and even giving yourself that feedback, having your own internal loop. I think one thing that we hold true to our professional development is understanding that, like, you don't know what you want to become. Like, you could think you do. One thing that provides a lot of clarity and like ease for high school kids is when we tell them, hey, there's a doctor somewhere who wants to change jobs right now while we're talking. The person who's so successful you're admiring, he's wants to change jobs. With that being said, I think that the way that we approach that for everybody, not just high school kids, is understanding, okay, what are you naturally good at? And this is one of our professional development methods. We say, what are you naturally good at? And once you define what you're good at, whether it's you grew up on a farm, you grew up in a restaurant, you have people skills, you have number skills, you identify what you're naturally good at, and then we ask them, what do you admire? Do you admire what brands do you admire? What people do you admire? What companies do you admire? And we define what traits of those brands, companies, people do you admire? And then the kicker so all that is like, oh wow, I have so much time to figure it out. I'm gonna pick my next job based on skill set. But then we ask them, what's time sensitive for you? So for me, time sensitive is like, I want to be a good dad. Like, I want to be a great dad. So that makes a lot of those transferable traits and skills I want to obtain time sensitive. So now what we teach high school kids and college kids, and what we all need to remind ourselves, is that who do I want to become in comparison to what do I have? And in that next step, with time being a factor, what step should I take to obtain the most skills I have? Because most people who reach success or whatever that is, when they look back, they're so happy about all the different side jobs and side gigs. And so having that approach to understand that I'm going to become the best person I possibly can become in preparation for when I know who I want to become provides a lot of ease for 17-year-olds, and I think should provide a lot of ease for us if we go home and identify what are we naturally good at, what do we want to become, and then that can be the deciding factor upon our next move.
I would say relationship. My pastor says, don't prophesy to someone if you don't know their first and last name. I would say, don't give someone just a straight up feedback if you're not ready to know who they are, and them knowing that you will come from a safe place. That's kind of how I see it. Building a relationship and being able to know them better, so that way when you talk to them, they actually take your advice as opposed to seeing you as an enemy. So a relationship, build a relationship first. Let them get to know the person first. So.
Are you going to be involved until it's resolved? That's actually one thing I live by in terms of, like, do I get involved in a problem? Do I help someone? It's like, am I going to be involved until it's resolved? If not, is my opinion constructive?
I think teaching failure too, like teaching how to fail. Like, you would ask, like, how can we get past the stigma?
That's where I get wrapped up in, like we say, fail fast. Like, no, don't fail fast. Like, that's not the goal is not failing. Stop saying that. The goal is learn as quickly, like, do more and learn as quickly as you can and adjust.
Yeah.
And so I do think, and I appreciate you guys having this conversation. I know this was kind of last minute, because I've been trying to think about how to be more like if we plan these things too far out or whatever, we lose time sensitivity and we lose kind of things that are rolling in my head that we need to address here. So I appreciate you guys having this conversation. For me, this is like, if in this mental health part of what we do, or what we should focus on, we always say one of the best ways to address the stigma of mental health and address it is to talk about it. And to normalize that it is an issue for people. I also think this idea of this fear, this thing that drives people not to go chase their dreams, this, whatever that is, we need to talk about that too. So I appreciate you guys all coming up here and having this conversation and sharing your stories.
Thank you for having us. It's an opportunity. Thank you.
Yeah, thanks for
Appreciate
creating
it.
the space.
Yes. Thank you for the space for sure. And just having a collision of dreamers and realists to provide actual feedback for everybody is a huge thing. So thank you.
Thank you for buying the mic too. It's helpful.
Yeah, absolutely.
Awesome. Thank you.
All right. Thanks, guys. Appreciate it.